Great to have you on the programme. What do we know about Truth, this new platform?
What we know as of now, because this is relatively brand new, it just came out yesterday, is that Donald Trump is presenting the world a masterclass in the art of the comeback. He's not joining his enemies, but he's actually beating them at their own game. With Donald Trump's new social media company, Truth Social, it's going to actually allow one of the most popular Twitter users, Instagram users, and Facebook users like Donald Trump, who had over 65 million users, to communicate with his vast amount of followers and to continue to amplify his voice and reach his network of supporters all around the world at a critical time in which we are less than 10 months away from an election season in this country, which will likely determine the next 10 years of legislation in America. So that is the key news that has come out regarding this new platform. The investors are overwhelmingly positive regarding this news. The SPAC, which is backing this fund, is exploding in growth. And I believe that the bottom line of Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is one of the last concerns that these tech CEOs should be focusing on right now, because they're likely going to have a new competitor in Donald Trump.
Yes, and will it be the home of free speech, George, or will it be a right-wing echo chamber?
I believe if democracy is to become more agile, faster, and better, we cannot allow any social media conglomerate to be the arbiter of free speech or the truth. And unfortunately, what's happening today in the United States and abroad is that we're moving from a democracy to a corporatocracy, one in which critical rights and privileges are being usurped by just a handful of tech CEOs. And these tech CEOs like Jack Dorsey of Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, or even, Tim Cook of Apple, are basically controlling what is allowed and what is not allowed to be stated on the social media platforms, which today are actually probably even more powerful in terms of messaging qualities than television. So the president had an opportunity actually to join one of these rival social media companies that have attempted to try and gain traction with the conservative movement, conservative voices, which feel disenfranchised because of the social media companies, some of these names like Parler or Gab. But the president decided to go on his own to make sure that he does include every voice out there and to assure that this company is not going to be an arbiter of free speech or the truth, but to assure that all voices are heard and just to allow the social media companies out there to do their job, allow people to speak, to express their ideas, and not to prevent free speech in this country.
Do you think, George, that this new platform will change the world of media in the way that the arrival of Fox News in America changed television in the 90s?
We can't underestimate the power of social media. Arguably, social media is the reason that Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and that's exactly why I believe that the president was beginning to be shadow banned, censored, and then eventually deplatformed on January 6th. So I believe that the power of social media and Trump's new social media company that he is just launching, Truth Social, which will be active as of next year, actually will probably be even more powerful for him to amplify his voice and to assure that his message does resonate throughout the United States and the world. And as I mentioned, his poll numbers are going through the roof. We have a disastrous president with President Biden. Independents themselves, not Democrats or Republicans, independent voters are leaving Biden supporters in droves. His poll numbers are at 38%. President Trump's poll numbers among the Republican Party are at over 80% approval rating. There's rumors now that he will run again, and I believe he understands that if he is going to run again, if he does not have a proper social media platform to have his voice out there and his messaging, it will certainly hurt him in that process. So this was an incredibly wise move. He's beating his enemies at their own game, and I'm certain that this will be a very successful social media platform which will welcome all voices and all political parties.
This isn't just about politics, is it, George? Because those who have been critical of COVID measures like lockdowns, face coverings or the vaccine have been cancelled by platforms like Facebook and Twitter. Lots of people thrown off the platform, some of them respected and experienced scientific voices. So I guess it's a free speech platform, not just for politics, but lots of other issues.
Certainly, there are many so-called influencers and prominent experts, as you mentioned, who have disparate or differing views from the mainstream media or even the mainstream opinion, which is propagated on television and in the newspapers. And those individuals have been silenced. Some have actually seen their livelihoods destroyed. Some people depend in this new digital economy 100% on their influence or their reach with social media. So what we're living now in is, unfortunately, this ecosystem, which is preserving one myopic viewpoint and not allowing a different point of view regarding COVID, regarding President Biden's foreign policy. It's really what I believe is the driving force behind not only why President Trump decided to launch this, but it's also why so many Americans and Brits and others around the world are being fed up with even joining companies like Twitter or Facebook, because they believe if they say one wrong word or if something is taken out of context, not only will they be blacklisted and prevented from using these social media companies, but likely face even legal problems. And that's something that we're witnessing in the United States. It's an unprecedented move that we are beginning to see with the Biden administration really targeting opponents and different political viewpoints. And it's something that I think is unsustainable in a democracy like the United States.
With you on that one, Dr. David Thunder, who is a very respected academic in Spain, was actually fired from and cancelled by and removed from Twitter for life because of his criticism of lockdowns. And that was just 2 weeks after his appearance on this show. I'm guessing here is a platform in which no one will be cancelled. Let's bring my panel into this. Hilary Freeman, Benjamin Loughnane and Mike Parry. Benjamin, what do you think? We can't have too many social media platforms, can we? Especially if they offer balance.
Yeah, and I think what has happened in the past few years with large social media platforms, big tech censorship, basically arbitering the truth and kicking people off just because they go against certain narratives which are believed to be set and unquestionable. But Trump had 4 years to introduce legislation to prevent these social media networks having so much power over what's said and who can say it. He didn't do that, and I think part of the reason he didn't is because he didn't want to get on the wrong side of them before a big election. Well, turns out they're on the wrong side of him anyway, and as soon as it was clear that, Biden looked like he was going to win, they kicked him off, they've banned him for life, and now if he wants to run again, he's in a situation where he needs those platforms to do it. I think that's why, fundamentally, set up his own social network. It's not because he thinks it's the right thing to do, it's because it's his only option left. And as much as I like Trump and I'd like to see him come back as president, because I think Biden is an absolute mess and a joke and nothing could be worse than the current situation, I do think that, this is not the way to go about it. He should have done more in the 4 years he had power.
Hilary, I know you're no cheerleader for Donald Trump, but do you think that sites like Twitter have made a rod for their own back by cancelling people like former President Trump from their site?
Well, I mean, he wasn't cancelled for no reason. I mean, he was putting out rubbish, lies, basically. I mean, I think
a lot of it, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, the idea that this is going to be called truth is quite funny, really. I mean, it's like, does Donald Trump actually know what the truth is? Because I've never heard him speak any of it. And the idea of him coming back as president is terrifying to me. I can't imagine anything worse.
You fan of Biden?
Mike
prefer
Parry,
Biden.
Tapping into your experience on Fleet Street, I mean, you've got The Guardian, which is to the left, and then you've got The Telegraph, which is to the right. Perhaps social media platforms should be like that as well. They should have a plurality of views.
Well, yes, they should, but they don't, do they? Because we all know that minorities can quickly seize the argument on all social media networks because they're more active and they're more fanatical and they go for it. I think this is a brilliant move by Trump. Only Trump could do it. It will completely discombobulate the Democrats because they won't know how to respond. Can you actually see Joe Biden coming up with such an innovative idea? Let's create our own social media. No. One thing I think he's got wrong is if I'd have invented it and I was his advisor, I would have called it not fake news. I wouldn't have called it the truth because I think I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that Harry and Meghan have grabbed that word by saying our truth. You know what I mean? The truth according to Harry and Meghan. I'd have called it not fake news, but it's a brilliant stroke because we all know that although he lost the presidency, something like getting towards 50% of the United States of America still adore this man. So you can imagine the sort of audiences and the sort of response he's going to get to the stuff he's going to put out on his new social media platform. I just think it's genius.
Let's see if we can get George back. Liam is trying to connect the line to Las Vegas in the United States. But, Mike, do you think that this new site can be a commercial success? Can it take on the might of Twitter and Facebook?
No, not in any imagination whatsoever. You look
now
at
I do. You hear and see
of the other two networks you've been talking about. You're talking about hundreds of billions of pounds. And Trump, for all his wealth, whether it be false wealth or whether it be, wealth based on huge debt or whatever, can't come up with that. But this is not a money-making operation. This is a changing the minds of the people operation. And for that reason, there'll be enough funds around to keep it up there floating and putting out the message.
Now, we're seeking to reconnect with George Papadopoulos. And, George, you're back. What are your final thoughts on this, George? Do you see this as a campaign tool for Donald Trump in his claim to get back to the White House in 2024? Or do you think this is a battle of ideas and a proper business interest from Donald Trump to create the new Twitter? What's the end game? What's the plan?
I think this transcends both politics and business. I think this goes to the core of freedom of speech in the United States and assuring that that hallmark of our Constitution is preserved. And I believe because President Trump was one of the most popular presidents in modern history, he just received over 75 million votes this past election, and he is at the helm of the Republican Party today, in which 80% of Republican voters would like to see him run again for president. I think he's doing this to assure that sacrosanct right for Americans is preserved and to allow the disenfranchised to continue to have a voice in America and to assure that we do not have this monopoly on the truth and the freedom of expression in America, because, like I said, allowing that to continue and to continue to see conservative voices censored in America is something that will destroy our republic and a democracy as we know it today.
George, do you think this will be a global brand?
I believe that many conservative voices and just different opinions out there, and we mentioned some of these doctors. I don't know if these doctors are conservative or liberal, but just because they have different opinions from the mainstream, they're being censored. And it's just something that the viewers have to understand, because they might not know this, but the Taliban and Iran's leader and other leaders around the world which spread propaganda and are, essentially calling for violence, they have social media platforms. They're allowed to spread their propaganda, but the president of the United States of America has been deplatformed, and it now has forced him to launch his own company simply to have a voice in the digital age that we live in, to continue to amplify his message and to continue on the campaign trail moving towards 2022 and 2024. It's the sad state of affairs that we live in today, but this is the world. But I do believe this does transcend both politics and business, and it strikes at the very core of what makes America the country it is.
George, finally, what are the percentage chances of Donald Trump seeking the Republican nomination? And if he gets it, does he win in 2024?
I look at what the Republican voters are polling. 80% of Republican voters in the United States want President Trump to run again. 58% of American voters believe that it's a danger to America if Biden even seeks re-election. And President Trump continues to be the number one most respected and popular Republican candidate, and with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, polling at a very distant number two. This makes perfect sense. The time is right for President Trump to seek re-election, because his popularity arguably is even higher today than it was when he was president, when he was facing myriad issues, including the COVID pandemic and other economic fallouts from that pandemic. So I think the time is right. I do believe he will run again. And should he run again, he will be the nominee in 2024.